Okay, so let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you were just kind of talking the talk in life, putting on a brave face, trying to hide what's really going on inside? Or maybe deep down there's this longing for a place where you actually belong, like really belong, where you're accepted no matter what your past looks like or even what you're struggling with right now.
Well, today we're going to peel back the layers on something pretty personal and I think really powerful. We're talking about the baptisms that happened just recently at Pewaukee Lake. It was part of Agape Community Church's Sunday service. And we have these two incredible testimonies from Dory and Scott, and they tell a story that's, well, it's way more than just a public thing. It's about finding a real way to live with, like actual hope and purpose.
Yeah, and what's really insightful here, I think, is how these very personal stories, they actually shine a light on a practical path for living out what some call the way of Jesus. So we're going to explore what it really means to like apprentice under Jesus. It's not just thinking about stuff. It's learning how to live like him day to day and how that whole journey connects you to something much bigger than just yourself, a real community and a completely new way of seeing the world.
Exactly. Yeah, this isn't just about, some old ceremony. It's about real people dealing with real life, finding answers, and making this huge commitment. Okay, so let's unpack this. So last Sunday, August 17th, that was the day. Dory and Scott, they stepped into Pewaukee Lake. And I mean, the image is powerful, sure, but it's the reasons why they did it, the stories behind it, that give us these really profound insights.
And it takes, real courage to do that, to stand up there, be vulnerable, share your deepest struggles, the turning points. Their willingness to be so open, it really sets the stage for us to think deeply, not just about their lives, but maybe about the things we're all building our own lives on.
Okay, let's start with Dory's journey. Her testimony, it's just incredibly raw, and I think it resonates, especially if you've ever felt that pressure to keep up appearances. She talked really openly about living a life filled with shame and regret. She admitted being me-focused, making plenty of excuses for her actions. But the part that really hit me, and probably hits a lot of us, is when she said she learned to talk the talk so people wouldn't see how broken I really was.
Yeah.
For someone maybe already familiar with faith, what does that tell us about, like, the deeper work involved? It's not just about adding new rules, is it?
No, that's a really important point. Her honesty just cuts right through that pressure, especially now, with social media and everything, to look perfect. What her story really shows, I think, is that real spiritual growth. It isn't always about getting new good habits. Sometimes it's about shedding the old stuff, the masks, the excuses, that constant need to look like you've got it all together. It's kind of upside down, isn't it? Vulnerability becomes the strength, not pretending to be perfect. That's the real path.
Right. Wow. Just thinking about keeping up that act is exhausting. But for Dory, the turning point came during a time of change and immense anxiety. That's what pushed her to, quote, give the church thing another go.
And she ended up finding Agape Community Church. And what she found there, well, it sounded almost like too good to be true at first. She said she was welcomed by people that didn't even know me, and they didn't seem to care about her past. She even admitted, this of course made me wonder if they were all crazy.
Yeah, you can imagine that feeling.
Because that kind of acceptance was just so different from what she knew. Right, and what's fascinating there is seeing that initial disbelief kind of melt away into this huge realization. She probably walked in expecting judgment, right? Or maybe thinking, okay, they're nice now, but wait till they see the real me. But instead, she found what she called love, acceptance, and prayers. And her conclusion, so powerful. I now know I don't need to be perfect and will screw up, but that's okay. I just need to believe and trust that his way is the best and only way. I mean, that just flies in the face of our society's obsession with being flawless. It's about an acceptance that actually, thrives on imperfection. And if you're feeling that weight of needing to be perfect, wow, that's not just freeing, it's revolutionary.
Yeah, totally. And her change wasn't just like an internal feeling, right? She actually did stuff. She mentions, I started volunteering and joined my first ever Bible study. So these were real steps, getting involved, stepping into that community and that new way of living she found.
Action followed belief.
Okay, so Dory's story really shows that journey of finding belonging. But then Scott's story adds another layer, maybe especially for those of us who've, been on this path for a while. Scott said he'd been a believer ever since I can remember. But his walk of faith, as he put it, wasn't always this straight line. He talked about times he felt intimately close, other times like a spectator, and even times when Jesus seemed like an apparition. That's such an honest picture of how faith can kind of ebb and flow, even if you've believed for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who's tried to live out their faith through life's ups and downs can relate to that. But Scott found this one consistent thread, he said. The closer I have been to Jesus, the more fulfilled and contented I have been, regardless of what went on around me.
Hmm.
And that's such a key insight, especially in our world that pushes achievement and perfection. It suggests that the consistency of that relationship with Jesus, even when things are messy, that's what actually builds deep resilience, not just, temporary happiness. It's a different kind of strength.
And he really didn't sugarcoat the tough stuff either. It's honesty about going through rejection, abuse, and abandonment, stuff that too often literally brought me to my knees. That's incredibly powerful. But then right after saying that, he says, and Jesus has, without fail, been there with grace and kindness to gently help me up so that I could continue on. It really shows this persistent, unwavering presence.
It really does. And that statement he makes, Jesus has been and will always be the Father who loves me unconditionally and will never abandon me.
Wow. That speaks directly to one of our deepest human needs, doesn't it? That need for secure attachment, for a love that won't quit. So many people, young or old, struggle to find or even trust that kind of dependable love and stability. Scott's experience points towards a source that's constant, unconditional, reliable.
Okay, so Dory and Scott, they step into the water, they make this public declaration. But what happens next? Like, what does it actually mean to live this out day by day after that moment? Yeah, that's the crucial question. And that's where this idea of apprenticeship under Jesus really comes in. It's easy sometimes, especially if you're familiar with church language, to think following Jesus is just about like believing the right things or following a new set of rules. But what Dory and Scott's stories show us is that it's more about recalibrating your whole internal compass. It's a daily process, really. Unlearning the world's ways and learning to operate on God's operating system, you could say.
Yeah.
It's the subtle, ongoing practice of learning to live like Jesus taught, to actually embody his way, even when it feels totally countercultural. And that practical, hands-on practice part, it's absolutely essential. It is the way of Jesus.
Right, and you can totally see that practice element in what Dory did, volunteering, joining that Bible study. Those are real tangible steps in learning that way.
Yeah.
And Scott's deep desire, to be the best man that I can be for everyone, whether it's a stranger or family, that's the daily apprenticeship right there, isn't it? It's not just saying, I believe. It's committing to a new way of being. Okay, and this is where it gets even bigger, I think. It expands beyond just like a personal decision. When we talk about committing to follow Jesus, something really profound happens, right? It's more than just me and Jesus.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's much bigger. It's like being adopted into God's family, becoming a citizen of a new kind of nation. This is what Jesus talked about as the kingdom of God. And for those who kind of get that it's not just about heaven someday, the key thing to grasp is that this kingdom, it's a real nation happening now. It has its own heritage, its own distinct culture that you actually become a part of. Remember in Matthew 6.33, Jesus basically told his followers, seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, his way of doing things, because everything else rests on that. It's not just about being personally good. It's about prioritizing God's way, his values, as the absolute foundation for everything else in your life. It reorders everything.
Wow. And you could actually see that distinct culture, that nation, playing out in Dory and Scott's stories, can't you? Like Dory finding people that didn't even know me who just welcomed her, didn't care about her past.
No.
That is the kingdom culture of radical acceptance in action. And Scott finding that unconditional love, that protection, a father who never abandoned him. That's the embrace of the kingdom right there. Their personal transformations aren't just individual wins. They're actually part of becoming citizens of this new reality, living by its values now.
Exactly. So when we put it all together, these testimonies show us that following Jesus, being an apprentice in his kingdom, it offers this powerful, practical answer to those deep needs we all have. The need for real acceptance that Dory found, the need for stability in the chaos that Scott experienced, and that universal need for unconditional love. It's about finding a true home for your soul and a practical, genuinely liberating path for real life. Not just for someday, but like right now, today.
So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would it look like for you listening right now? What would it look like to embrace a way of life where you don't actually have to be perfect, where you know you're unconditionally loved, and where you're actively learning, practicing this way that brings real fulfillment no matter what else is swirling around you? Something to think about. Well, this deep dive into Dory and Scott's stories and what it really means to apprentice under Jesus, if this resonated with you or was helpful,
please think about subscribing to the deep dive and maybe share it with a friend you think might get something out of it too. Also, just a reminder, if you have specific prayer requests, anything going on that you'd like prayer for, you can submit them online at our website, agapechurch.life. We have a prayer team there, and they'd be truly honored to pray specifically for whatever you share. And one last thing, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. It's definitely still a work in progress, we know, but we're working on it, getting better, and adding new content there for you all the time.